everyone, and welcome to Royals at the Ranch, episode 6. I'm Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary, and I'm actually joined this evening by Amun, and he is one of the first 2 Royal Pythons that joined our family. He was one of our first 2 behavior study animals. He and Amunet arrived here specifically for a behavior study to preference test habitats to see if they preferred living in a tub or living in an environmentally complex habitat. Well, in last week's episode, you saw their arrival, and unfortunately it was just through photographs, because back then I was taking very detailed written notes and keeping a journal and keeping behavior logs, and I wasn't taking very many videos, but I did take a few photos. So if you haven't caught last week's episode, go ahead and check that out. It shows me picking them up at FedEx and me getting them set up for their first night here, which if you already watched the last episode, you know didn't go very well, because I actually stayed up all night with them and watched their behavior, and I observed lots of stereotypies as well as stress behaviors. And then the next day, they slept all day, and the very next night, when I started observing them again, I started witnessing the same stereotypies and the same stress behaviors, which included edging, nose rubbing, face pushing, and in the case of Amun here, he was striking at any motion outside of his tub. And so by the second night, I decided that my research wasn't worth putting the snakes through distress. And I didn't have their habitats yet. And this is Amun's habitat right here. Right now he is 20 months old, so he'll be 2 years old in 4 months, and he's in a 3x2x2 habitat. So I put them both in chondro tubs, and I showed a chondro tub in a recent video on Serpente Sunday. So if you haven't watched that, you can go ahead and take a look at that, and I show you what one of those tubs is. And I also link to a video of where I first learned about the chondro tubs, which was through Zach Baez. It's a tub with a clear front door that opens out. And so they're able to see out, and you're able to open a front opening door, or you're able to open the top. And other than that, it's just a tub like any other. This is Amun, the first night I moved him into the chondro tub. Now, I want to remind you that first night they were here, I observed them and took notes. And they exhibited a lot of stereotypies and stress behaviors. They slept the whole next day, and then the next night I watched them again, and they exhibited stereotypies and stress behaviors, and I chose to move them out of the tubs they were in and into chondro tubs. So by the second night they were here, I put them in one of those tubs, and I immediately saw the stereotypies cease. I saw the stress behaviors cease, and as I stayed up all night watching them, I saw all sorts of natural behaviors that I assumed were species typical behaviors for Royal Pythons. I saw them slowly and curiously tongue flicking and moving around the enclosure, but no nose rubbing, no face pushing, and no pacing. I saw them climbing. I saw them getting into ambush positions. Now let's take a look at a few scenes from the first night that they were in the chondro tubs. And when I say first night, that would have been the night starting March 25th, 2020, and then going into the early hours of the morning on March 26th, 2020, because I observed them all night, and sometime during the night, after I had seen them exhibiting stereotypies and stress behaviors, was when I moved them into these tubs, and I moved them with everything they had in their previous tubs. Paper towels for substrate, the same water dish, and the same 2 hides. The only addition was that there were already perches installed in these tubs, and then of course there was the front opening door that the snakes actually had the ability to see out of, which seemed to make a huge difference to Amun, who immediately quit the striking behavior that he was doing when he was in that opaque tub that he couldn't see directly out of. This made a huge difference for both of them, and as I said before, the stereotypies and stress behaviors ceased immediately, and I did not ever observe those again while the snakes were in these chondro tubs at all. This episode's pause in our story is going to be for a word on welfare. Animal welfare is defined as an animal's collective physical, mental, and emotional states over a period of time and is measured on a continuum from good to poor. The word measured is one of the key terms in this definition of animal welfare because animal welfare is a science and it requires data to enable people to make evidence-based animal management decisions. When conducting an animal welfare assessment, the following things are looked at. Is the animal healthy, well-nourished, comfortable, and safe? Does the animal have the ability to develop, and is the animal expressing species-typical relationships, behaviors, and cognitive abilities? And does the animal lack pain, fear, or distress? Positive reinforcement training, enrichment, and choice-based care and handling are just a few of the things that we can do as keepers to optimize welfare for our snakes and for the other animals in our care. I want to also point out that in our current videos, if you don't see me holding the royal pythons that are currently here, and we currently have 5, it's because they haven't voluntarily come out of their enclosures. If you're a regular follower of my channel and you watch my other videos, you will know that I do only choice-based handling, and I try to be the least intrusive, minimally aversive possible in all of my care, handling, and training. So unless it's an emergency, I don't intrude into the animal's habitat, I don't take them out, and I don't force them out. If the animal wants to come out on their own, which Amun did tonight, then I will let them out, I'll let them explore, and I'll do a little bit of handling with them to get them used to it. But I don't force that, as I said, unless it's an emergency. This is an example of how Amun spends some of his time when he has chosen to come out of his enclosure. I did a little bit of handling habituation with him, and he explored the room that he lives in for just a few minutes. And then I brought him to one of our exercise and enrichment areas, and I let him explore and climb around this snake tree, which is actually a repurposed bird perch. It's for giant birds, and I bought it from Pikes Peak Parrot Rescue. When I'm making these Royals at the Ranch videos, if you don't see me interacting with one of the snakes, if you don't see me holding one, it's because they didn't choose to come out when I was making the video, and I'm not going to force them to come out just to make a video. I will take plenty of photographs and videos of them during their times when they are visible and when they do choose to come out, and I will make sure and include as many of those as possible in these videos as we proceed. Now let's get back to our story about Amun and Amunet and their first several nights in these chondro tubs. As you can see in this video, I added a humid hide. On March 27th, I decided that these tubs were large enough that I could add a humid hide for each snake. This is a 6-quart tub that is filled with damp sphagnum moss. Things I observed during the first few nights that Amun and Amunet were in these chondro tubs were things like climbing, perching, rectilinear locomotion, time inside their humid hides, time spent in an ambush position, both on the ground and from up high. They spent lots of time on the ledges that were created by where the top of the door and the lid of the tub came together. Both of the snakes seemed very comfortable and relaxed in these chondro tubs. I didn't notice any stereotypies, and I was not noticing any stress behaviors when I was leaving them alone. Of course, because they were new and they weren't used to me and had not been used to too much prior handling, they did exhibit some stress behaviors during interactions. But let's go back to March 2020 and hear about that in my own words. This is going to be an example of phase 1 habituation. The animals in these 2 tubs are in quarantine. They're part of a special project that I'm doing. At some point, I'll report on that and do a video about it. But all I'm going to do is open the enclosure and check on them. Now, I already know that this animal is in his humidity hide because I took the lid off of this tub and checked on him earlier. And then I just put the lid back on and left, and that's all I'm going to do now. I'm going to close this door. I'm going to make sure it's latched, and I'm going to leave. Same here. This animal is in quarantine, phase 1 habituation, which means she's hiding. I'm just checking that she's okay by either removing the lid of this tub or opening the door, and then I'm going to close it. And that is all I'm going to do with these animals that are in phase 1 habituation until they are either coming out when I open the door or remaining out when I walk around their enclosures without retreating back into hiding. Well, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed that. I thank you so much for watching. I thank you for your interest in Python Regis and for your interest in animal training and behavior. Until next time, everybody, please remember to always be kind and love your animals.